Heidi Larson, Professor of Anthropology, Risk and Decision Science, and Director of the Vaccine Confidence Project at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, is waiting for us to give her key lecture. She's calling us from far India. Hi Heidi, we can see you, or I can see you at least here on the screen. Heidi Larson holds a concurrent position as the Clinical Professor of Health Metric Science at the University of Washington and a guest professor at the University of Antwerp and KU Leuven. And I just wanted to mention what is written here. BBC named her as one of the 100 most influential women in the world. Thank you very much, Heidi, to join us here and give your key lecture on the next 5 years, sustaining trust in a complex landscape. Thank you so much.
I'm going to start with the first part of my slides, really giving the landscape of where we are now when it comes to trust in immunization and trust particularly in vaccination across Europe, including safety, efficacy, and importance of vaccine. As in the Vaccine Confidence Project, which I founded in 2010, we have been monitoring and mapping and investigating issues around vaccine trust and confidence for 15 years, but in 2015 developed a Vaccine Confidence Index, which a number of you know about, which brings together what we found the 4 most predictive domains of vaccine confidence: trust in the safety of vaccines, trust in the efficacy, do they work, the perceived importance of vaccines, and compatibility with religious or philosophical beliefs. Those 4 things, after running lots and lots and lots of questions, were the biggest predictors of vaccine uptake. So, and we've been every other year. I'm going to stop for a minute and just say thank you to Miriam. She's been a huge, well, also you, Daniel, just in leading the VAC4EU initiative. I mean, even from our time collaborating together on Advance. And anyway, just a thank you and happy birthday for the 5th year. I meant to start with that, but anyway, so we've been doing biannual monitoring with the European Commission. You can go online, Vaccine Confidence at EU, and you can see the reports from 2016, 2018, 2020, and 2022. But in 2021, we had the opportunity to do a much broader investigation, thanks to a MacArthur Award, where we looked at a number of different aspects during COVID of confidence in different interventions, masking, distancing, vaccines, but also what were some of the other contextual factors. And we were able to investigate far more domains around trust, who people trust, who they turn to. So we're going to leap right into the data now. Within Europe, trust in national authorities, which we talk a lot about trust in institutions. In fact, one of the things, early learnings in the Vaccine Confidence Project was it really, a lot of time, confidence in vaccination was not just about the vaccine. In many cases, it was about trust in the provider, trust in the policy, trust in the in the health system. And so here we did trust in national authorities, and as you can see, it was hugely varied across countries. Next. We also saw that perceptions of vaccine safety, we correlated perceptions of vaccine safety with trust in government, and Norway, Portugal, and Denmark showed a strong correlation between trust in vaccines and trust in government, trust in the health system, whereas Poland, Greece, and Hungary, less than 50% of the respondents trusted the government to act in their best interest, and also were at the lowest end of perceived vaccine safety. So again, that's a domain. It's not specific to the technical aspects of vaccine safety, but just the impact of trust in the health system affects perceptions of vaccine safety. Next. We found that the reverse of what I was just talking about, how high confidence in systems reflected high confidence in vaccine safety. We looked at trust in institutions, international organizations, local government, local health service, national health service, and national government. And as you can see, the orange bars were the high confidence in vaccines, and again, the highest trust in these institutions were the ones that had the highest trust and confidence in the vaccine. Next, please. And what we did see overall is that Europe had less trust in national government and health authorities than other regions in the world. But when it came to trust in international organizations, interestingly, Europe had very similar levels to the rest of the world. Next. So now I'll go more into the specifics of vaccine confidence. That was more contextual on institutions. Next. So when we compare different regions, and just to give to the context, this data was collected in September, between August and end of September in 2023. So we're already 2 years ahead of this, but we really wanted to capture what was the state of things coming out of, well, we're not out of COVID, but out of the pandemic phase. And we saw that Europe had the lowest confidence in vaccine safety, importance, and effectiveness globally. That's been pretty consistent since our first global study in 2016. Europe has tended to be lower in confidence. But safety, which is the orange bar, perceived importance is the blue bar, and safety is the orange bar, gray is effectiveness. And Europe certainly had the lowest perception of vaccine safety in all the countries. Next. We also looked a lot at gender and age, and we did again see that when we broke down by gender, that women in Europe were more hesitant, significantly more hesitant than men. I have to say that in general around the world, there tends to be a little more of a difference leaning towards women being a bit more hesitant, but not as extreme as it was in Europe. Next. When we look globally, we also monitor over time to see trends, because we think that's really important, because when you do point in time, you don't know, it may seem high, but then it's lower than before, or it may seem low, but it's been low. So this goes back to our early 2016 data. It's interesting, there were the big measles outbreaks and the effort, the joint action across Europe to build confidence and uptake in vaccination did actually start to boost overall confidence. It was I think, a very important effort. But then once COVID hit, it started to take a nosedive again. And while there were little boosts of, what was interesting is we found that our last round in 2022, just before COVID, of the EU specific study showed we coincidentally were rolling it out in March of 2022, March of 2020, and it showed that between 2018 and 2020 that there was a 17% increase in older age groups' confidence in the flu vaccine. So I think that probably coincided with the pandemic was just announced as being a pandemic level, and we didn't have a COVID vaccine yet. So a lot of people felt like I should at least get my flu vaccine. This is respiratory. There was also a lot of news saying, you know, we have a potential twindemic. So people were associating the two. So it has been on a bit on the decline, but still it did boost the older adult confidence, but not for younger age groups. Next, please. The Europe trend, by the way, is quite opposite from the rest of the world, because the rest of the world also took a nosedive during COVID, but most regions are, Africa in particular, but even other regions in Asia are starting to bounce back at much more of a level, than Europe. Again, some of these are averages across Europe, and we know that it's highly varied, and there's much, as we saw in the very early slides, it's highly varied. So there are some countries, individual countries, that are doing much better than other parts of the world, and some that are doing not as well. So one of the big findings and concerning findings that we saw when we compared 2022 to pre-COVID levels of confidence, and this was this was beyond the EC, this was from the 70 countries study. It was really people under 35 that were pushing the decline in confidence in vaccines. And that's a particular concern, given that under 35 is more likely to be the age group to be having children if they decide to have children. And we really need confidence, particularly for pediatric vaccines, in that age group. Next. This was pulled from the EU 2020 report that's online if you go into the European Commission and search for vaccine confidence in 2022. This really is quite strikingly shows the difference, because the green line is the over 65 and the pink line is 18 to 34, and you can see the points are 2018, 2020, and 2022, and it was really quite a dramatic drop. And we made sure we also asked specifically about some other vaccines. We asked about MMR, we asked about HPV, just to make sure in the general, vaccines are important, vaccines are safe, that people might have still had COVID on their mind, or likely did. And we just wanted to make sure that wasn't, the response was not specific to COVID. So we specifically asked about MMR, and that too had this very significant decline among that younger age group. Next. We again saw very significant variations across countries, much higher confidence certainly in Scandinavia, but also Portugal, Spain were on the top with the Scandinavian countries. And then really it was, as we've seen in earlier ones, more Eastern European countries and Baltic areas that were, this is not inconsistent with previous, but we've still have work to do, clearly. Next. This was actually, this was already in the beginning. This was just another version of it. Sorry. Next. I think one of the most important, interesting, certainly studies that I had seen came from colleagues at INSERM, Jeremy Ward and colleagues, who there was kind of an epidemic of would you take a COVID vaccine if offered, or a new one? And they took the perspective of when you got your COVID vaccine, did you feel relief? Did you feel regret? Did you feel resent or anger? And what's really striking about this is that in January of 2021, it was very high levels of relief. I certainly was relieved when I got my vaccine, but as the year went on, the relief went down, and the regret and even anger went up and up. And they were particularly looking at the impact of the introduction of the health pass that would, confirmed you had a COVID vaccine, but it was already just from the going up in other ways. Next. So what we've seen out of this big 70 countries study, within which we were particularly focusing on Europe, there has been a concerning rise in cynicism and fall in vaccine confidence. There's falling trust in a complex information system, particularly right now with what's going on in the US. It's not helping our confidence in information. And we need to, I think Europe in particular, and what VAC4EU is doing, we need it more than ever, because we need an alternative, credible voices and sources on vaccine safety, on the importance, on the effectiveness of vaccines. And also, people are looking more and more, not just for the scientific evidence, but they want to know relevance and relatability. This is a louder and louder ask from the public. I'm just going to now have just a few more slides that are looking at some of the newer things coming up, looking forward, that we need to pay attention to. Next. I think one of the biggest concerns, and this has huge implications too for vaccine safety, the World Economic Forum every year publishes a global risk report, and they look at, and this is really captures what the perceptions of our risk for business, risk for a lot of different domains. And in this year, in 2025, the report called out misinformation and disinformation were reported as people's biggest concerns over the next 2 years. It was higher than extreme weather, higher than armed conflict, higher than pollution, and infectious diseases wasn't even on the top 10 anymore, which it had been 4 years earlier. So this is one important signal, and I think that's also been precipitated or exacerbated by AI and how that's going to make that even more complex. Next. One thing that was actually, and this might sound funny, but one thing that I saw in one study with Edelman, the Edelman Trust Barometer, we collaborate closely with them and share and compare data. They found that in the 18 to 34-year-old group, 41% had said they regretted making decisions based on misinformation. So I think that's a heartening thing. It means that they are being reflective. They are recognizing that they need to pay more attention to the implications of misinformation. So I think that that's a really important age group, because that's also the age group that we found was, more having less confidence in vaccines. So this is also particularly important with information on vaccine safety, because that is a big button for people's anxieties. Next. We did with the 70 country study, since we had investigated many domains of who people trust, who they turn to. We did this piece in Nature in April, where we compared. People say, oh, do you trust science or do you trust healthcare providers? But they rarely look together at the multiple places people are turning to and trusting. So you can think you're doing well with high trust in science, but then you look and you see trust in religious leaders is higher, or trust in families. And we see at the global average, the red bar is science, the dark blue is family, and then pale blue is friends. We have about 10 other different domains of who people turn to, and we have this for 70 countries. We only picked these 6 and the global average for this Nature piece, but it really shows that we need to look at ecosystems and trust. And where science is challenged is not necessarily that there's low trust, but they don't have as much influence as other domains. Next. We also looked a lot at trust in social networks. Again, this was part of the spectrum of who we were looking at: religious leaders, family doctors, scientists, political leaders. We also asked about employers. But the point of this slide is really we disaggregated by men and women under 35 and men and women over 35. You can see how varied by age and gender it is. So it really speaks to the importance of really tailoring, not just by gender, not just by age, but by both, and also by what domain you're looking at, because this is becoming a highly nuanced but really critical area. Trust is very vulnerable right now. And we need a lot of vigilance on it and regular nurturing of trust, but where people are turning, not where we think they should be turning. Next. This is another big concern is the U.S., as I'm sure you all know, had done some severe cuts on mRNA studies. This is a big concern because of its canceling the studies, but also it sends a signal, and we've already picked this up on social media monitoring, that it makes, we've seen other countries say, well, if they're canceling it, there's something wrong with this. So we also need to pay particular attention to trust building and safety studies that help build confidence among people. This is really a new and emerging anxiety in publics. Next. We've done, again, this was a mapping of nearly 750,000 Twitter posts globally. The yellow arrows that I put in there are European countries. As you can see, negative is the pale coral orange color. So the highest bulk of Twitter posts were negative about mRNA, with very small blue is neutral and the green on the top is positive. And this was a recent study, actually. Next. So what are we doing about all this? We've just launched with colleagues a Quality Health Information for All commission. It's actually the first Nature commission. There's a lot of Lancet commissions, but this is the first time they've hosted and launched a commission. And we're really doing everything we can to try to, from multiple perspectives, build quality health information. And I really want to make sure that we get the domain of vaccine safety considered in this. And I'm happy to talk further about that for those interested in. Next. And the last thing I wanted to bring attention to is we often talk about safety and appropriately about, the vaccine itself, what's in a vaccine, but we don't always consider the safety or adverse events related to the vaccination experience. And this has been a particular issue with the HPV vaccine, where again and again, a lot of the issues around some of the particularly young girls' reactions, fainting, eating disorders, mobility problems, a whole spectrum of things that, as you know, Denmark even called for a re-review of the safety of the vaccine by the EMA a while back, but globally it's come up. And next, because of that, WHO had so many countries calling for help to address these issues because they couldn't find a vaccine content problem, but they had all these issues and a very, in some cases quite angry, proactive publics. Japan suspended their proactive recommendation for the HPV vaccine for 9 years and just has started a couple of years ago. I have 2 researchers there following up on it, and they're struggling to get the acceptance up after that blackout on information for 9 years. So WHO recognized that it is really an area that needs more attention, and they have added to the domain of issues of AEFI's anxiety. They created a new term, ISRR, and here they put immunization anxiety-related reaction in their characterization. Next. And they created a term called ISRR, immunization stress-related response. And that is, initially they were thinking to call it immunization anxiety, but they felt they needed something broader. And this includes the spectrum of signs and symptoms. It's multiple ones, so they thought that was more acceptable, more appropriate. Next. There is a manual. If you go online and search ISRR WHO, there's a manual for health workers that they did a lot of work on to help healthcare workers anticipate, prepare, try to mitigate these kinds of reactions. But it is something that, I don't know if in VAC4EU should be something to have a think about, to consider in the spectrum of safety issues and certainly reported symptoms and safety. Next. And on that whole area of work inspired me to go to Richard Horton at the Lancet and proposed that we do a commission on the emotional determinants of health, not just about vaccines, but more broadly. And we're really moving forward on that from the evolutionary biology and why we have emotions in the first place to neuroscience and the physiological connection with emotions and physical symptoms. And a lot of other evidence and data that we're learning. We're farther along on that commission than the quality health information, but I really think this is a very important area for us to consider in our work on vaccines in the spectrum of issues. And just the last slide is just our website. And there's lots of resources on there, and happy to follow up. And I hope this was, I don't mean to be doomsday here, but we have a lot of work to do, and I really look forward to continue our collaboration with VAC4EU. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Heidi, for this marvelous presentation and these insights. It's always so inspiring also to hear from this side of the story and the coins.